The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar from Inductive Automation, Develop Projects in a Fraction of the Time with Ignition HMI SCADA software. This is the release of version 7.4, Ignition. I just want to take a minute, since we have a great number of new people joining us today, to give a little bit of background on the Inductive Automation. The company was actually started in 2003. Steve Heckman, who was an integrator with actually 25 years of experience at that time, thought there just had to be a better way to get things done in this industry. He really put together sort of an A-team, if you will, of computer technology specialists, programmers, systems integration skills, and engineering skills, and really pioneered web-based HMI SCADA and MES software. It's highly integrated with databases, and it's really using modern technology to develop it. As you can see, it's really expanded and been applied successfully in a variety of industries across the world. It's also something that we're very proud of in terms of the award-winning nature of what we've put together here with Ignition. Last year, Inductive Automation was recognized by Oracle and Automation World for Innovation. Oracle's Duke Choice Award was awarded for innovative use of Java in the industrial software industry, and Automation World Reader's Choice Award was awarded for innovation in SCADA information management. Inductive Automation and Ignition is the fastest growing HMI SCADA and MES software company in the world. There are thousands of installations in over 60 countries around the world. I decided to put this in here because I wanted to just take a minute on it, because I think it's important to understand really where we have come from in our mission. Inductive Automation produces software that reduces frustration and increases efficiency in the industrial automation market. Our software facilitates the instant accessibility of meaningful information throughout the enterprise. We begin by listening, then acting on what we hear to inject innovation and unprecedented value into the industry. When you think about this, I wanted to mention it because really everything in inductive automation and our mission is really inspired by real-life users. It's built from the perspective of people who have to use this product on the plant floor and really have to make it work. Ignition is a coherent, integrated package. It takes a variety of aspects that we hear from our users, and it rolls them into a product that does what users need to do. You're going to see that embodiment of that mission statement in what gets demonstrated and presented today. But for those of you, who already know us, you know that that mission statement it's really not just a bunch of lip service. You see it in every day when you're working with us and how we approach all aspects of our relationship with you, whether it's training and support services. Well, actually, even the licensing model that we had set up is striving to help you accomplish your goals and to be more successful. Little overview for what is Ignition. We're going to cover that today. 5 ways to develop projects faster, latest features in 7.4, and how all these features really work together. Simply stated, Ignition is a web-managed platform with web-launched clients and web-launched designer. What can it do? HMI SCADA and MES functionality, historian functionality using any SQL database, business applications using any SQL database, recipes, batch management functionality. Actually, practically any SQL application that you can imagine, you can do with Ignition. Today's topic, Ignition has a lot of major time-saving features, and we're going to explore these today. The first time-saver is the fundamental way Ignition was built. Its web-based development environment eliminates the need for tedious, repetitive tasks such as multiple client installations and setup, which can cost a lot of time. The other 4 points here are really wrapped around today's 7.4 release. Project templates, component templates, user-defined types, which are actually just data templates, and powerful scripting features. We're going to go into each of these. and then I'm going to pass it over to our senior software developers, Carl Gold and Kobe Clay, and they're going to demonstrate how these aspects work together. First, looking at a web-based environment. As you look at this, if you're familiar with Ignition, you're very familiar with this point. But for new folks, this is a quick overview. One of the reasons people use Ignition. It's server-centric. In Ignition, everything resides on a central server in your network. This means everything you do with Ignition happens in one place. Designer client is included and web launches to any PC. So we got free Designer clients, and you have the power to put them on any PC. Once you have your Designer interface open, you can create projects which are all stored on the server. Create as many projects as you like. Ignition server license includes unlimited free tags, screens, database connections, etc. So it allows you to make as many projects as you want, and then they're all stored on the central server so they can later be accessed by other machines. Once your projects have been designed, you can easily launch them with one click of a button. Ignition gives you unlimited free clients, so you can launch as many clients as you want to any screen or any device. Web-based development is really a time saver. As you can see, web-based development really saves you time and allows you to do things one time in one place with no individual client installations or any setup involved in that. So if you just take an example of that, there's another way it helps, and that is the ability to develop a project concurrently. Let's say you have a 120-hour project to implement, and one developer, that could end up taking you, you can see, several weeks. However, if you look at it this way, 5 developers, 120-hour implementation, and you can take care of that in 3 days. Next area is project templates. And if you think of this, just think in terms of what we've done. Is create project templates that are designed to help you get started faster. You don't have to worry about basic navigation structure. You're started right away, and it fits a wide range of projects. Also, these represent, from our experience, the best ways to build your projects. Next, component templates. Exciting new, this is really exciting new feature of our software products that's offered here. It's offered in other products, but it's now available in Ignition. If you take a look at any type of component you want, just a tank component here with some monitoring data below, and then you decide that you want to move that out, so you basically can reuse the template over and over again, cutting down on development time, and you make changes to the template, and once you've made changes to that template, all instances across the project will instantly update. User-defined types. These are really templates for data structure. These operate very much like component templates. So if you take a look at creating a user-defined type, using it over and over again, just like if you use the component templates. The old way, you may have to make a data structure for you. You're making a data structure for each individual component. And if you had, say, 300 duplicate data structures, you build the data structure 300 times. Then if you needed to make a change, you need to make the change 300 times. Now you don't have to do that with Ignition's user-defined types. You can also add user-defined types, or UDTs, to component templates, which greatly accelerate your development power. Of course, you've already created the tank as a component template, so any change you make to it will propagate across all screens. If you add a UDT to the component, then all components in the project have an instance of that UDT on them. So as you look at that, it updates across, obviously updates across all screens. Let's say you add a new tag, such as a level indicator, and then you basically change the UDT will be reflected in the component template. And in the component template, the graphical level indicator, that you say you want to put that in there, then that's added also. The changes made to both the UDT and the component template appear across all instances in the project. Powerful scripting. Just a point on that. If you think about powerful scripting in terms of this particular area, we're talking about Python, which helps you accomplish whatever you want the software to do in a very efficient way. In this instance, and frankly, Python makes it easier to do more things with less code. Some benefits, it's familiar to programmers, so many of them can easily use it. They already understand it. Python's not proprietary. Many people will understand it because they don't have to relearn a new scripting language that's only used in one particular software. And it's efficient. Again, you can do more functions with less code. In Ignition 7.4, you have context-sensitive scripting help and built-in library functions. And these two features, they save a lot of time because it means you don't have to bounce back and forth between your program and the user manual to find things. And this really streamlines your scripting and streamlines your development time. Just a point, though, no scripting knowledge is really required because interactive binding tools and graphical script builders make it easy to accomplish most common tasks. This really makes it easy for you to get started without worrying about scripting, so you can focus on the project. At this time, with that sort of background on those 5 areas that we're going to focus on in terms of saving time and efficiency with the release of 7.4, I want to turn it over to Carl and Colby, and they'll take it from here with how to do it.
All right, thanks, Don. Good morning, everyone. My name is Colby Clegg, and I'm with Carl Gould, and together we're the lead developers for Ignition. And we're very excited to be here this morning and to show you Ignition, and in particular, some of the new features we've introduced for 7.4. We're very excited about 7.4 because for us it represents a goal that we've had for some time, and we think that the features we've put in are really going to make an impact on the way that people design projects and the speed with which those projects are realized. We thought that today, instead of our normal new release demo process where I come up and show you a few features and Carl comes up and shows some others, we would take a bit of a more holistic approach and instead show you how all the new features of Ignition work together to enable you to build projects very rapidly. These are very useful projects and projects that can really have an impact on your company that you can build in really just a few minutes or hours. So what we're going to do today is in the span of the next few minutes, we're going to put together a simplified but nonetheless accurate and very useful application inspired by real life. Many of you know that we're located in Sacramento, California, not far from wine country, and so we've been fortunate to work with a number of wineries, and these types of systems come up quite a bit. These wineries each have tank farms where the wine is fermented in large 250,000-gallon tanks, and they need to monitor them. They need to monitor the level, the temperature, and they want to create alerts, store history, and occasionally there's manual data that they want to enter by hand. So what we're going to do is accomplish all these goals very easily with Ignition, and we're going to do this for our imaginary winery, Chateau Inductive. Normally a winery would have hundreds of tanks, but we're going to simplify it a bit today and focus on a handful of tanks. But certainly with just a bit more work, we could expand it out to any number. And on that note, I should mention that generally in Ignition there are multiple ways to accomplish something. And so for those of you watching today with the experience with Ignition, even if you haven't seen some of the features we're working with, if you get an idea as we go along of how you might do something, it doesn't mean that it's wrong, that we're doing it differently. It just means that we've gone down another path. So before we get started, let's go over what we have. I should reference the points on the slide really quickly to say that this tank system, as I mentioned, it is inspired from real life and made previous to Ignition and to all these improvements. It was quite a large project, but so we're going to see how we can improve on it. On this machine, let's see, let me start to pull up the demo here. On this machine here, we've installed Ignition and MySQL database to store history. Both of those only took a few minutes to install, but we figured we wouldn't bore you with that procedure. So beyond that, we haven't done any other prep work. On the PLC side, we have a control logic that we'll be using today, using the UDTs that are supported in that environment to model the tanks. As you'll see, this makes it very easy to map over to types and ignition. But if you're using a different PLC environment that doesn't support UDTs, don't worry. We've added a number of features to make building UDTs with those systems easy as well. So let's bring up our gateway. All right. Here we go. We're going to launch the designer. Actually, first off, we're going to log into the gateway before we get to the designer, and we're going to configure our database connection and our PLC connection. So like I said, we've installed MySQL on this local machine. We created an empty schema for this. All right, and on the device side, we're going to add a connection to our control object. So it's pointing out to new users that this is the base install. Our ignition comes with drivers for Allen Bradley, Modbus, and Siemens, Ethernet-based protocols. All right, now we're going to launch the designer. We're working with multiple monitors here, so the preload screen is up on my right, and I'll bring it over. Oh, there we go.
This is Carl speaking. While this is loading, I'd just like to point out for anybody new to our software, what Colby just did to load the designer software is what we call web launching, and that's how we launch both the designer and our Vision clients. And so you just need a web browser pointing to the Ignition Gateway, which is a web server, and then anywhere that's accessible within your network, you can click on that Launch Designer link and launch the designer application.
Right, and as Don mentioned, you can do that on multiple machines and have multiple people working together at the same time. So we're going to start off by using one of these new project templates that Don mentioned. We'll call our project Tank Farm. We've got our MySQL connection, and we're going to select, for this example, we'll go with the simple single-tier nav north project. This is a simple north docked navigation bar and leaving the bulk of the window for our core content.
While the designer is creating that project, another thing I'd like to point out is that, so Colby mentioned that there's built-in driver support for Allen Bradley, Siemens, and Modbus, but the Ignition Gateway is also fully OPC enabled. It has full support for OPC UA and classic OPC connections. So if there's a device that you need to connect to that we don't have built-in driver support for, you can hook up Ignition to third-party OPC servers and connect to devices that way.
All right, so here we have our designer. As you see, it looks a little different now. We've added a new, we now see our recently monitored, modified windows, our windows from our project that we've started with. Under tags, we have a data type folder now. And this is where the types for our tag provider will reside. The first thing we're going to do is create our data types. We're going to start by browsing the OPC server. We see the device that we added, and we see our ControlLogix program. Under this, we have our tank UDTs that we've created for this project, and we see the values underneath them. Now, in previous versions of Ignition, we would have brought all of these tags over as individual tags, and there may have been a folder for each tank, and we might have been able to do indirect binding and things like that. But as Don mentioned, if we at any point wanted to make a change that affected all of them, we'd have to go to each one and modify it. I could start by bringing the tags over like that, but instead I'm going to use a new shortcut and drag this data type folder directly onto our data types our data type folder in the provider. The system knows that we have done something different like that and asks if we want to create a type or import them as regular tags if we did that by accident. So let's create a data type out of it. It brings up basically the data type editor, pre-populated with the fields of that folder. What we want to do now is make this data type generic. What we want to do is make it so that we can reuse it for each of the different tanks in the system. So to do that, we need to parameterize it. We need to add parameters that will then reference in each of the subtags, and will get populated on a instance-by-instance basis. In real terms, what that means is I'm going to add a field for the tank ID. It can be an integer. And then I'm going to come in to each tag, and where it previously had the value hard-coded, I'm going to replace it with that property. I just hit control space there. You can also type a curly bracket to do it. For the rest of them, I'm going to simply copy and paste it. So this mechanism can be used in virtually all of the string properties of a tag. And UDTs can contain all of your standard tag types, the OPC tags, expression tags, query-based tags, or static values. Okay. So there we go. We've done that, and we've created our data type. The next step is to create instances of them. We're going to create one for each tank. I'll start by making a folder to organize them. And you see we can now create a new tank type. However, we actually want to make a bunch at once. So to do that, we're going to use another neat feature called the multi-instance wizard. This wizard basically lets us use those parameters and create many tags at once by specifying patterns for their values. The patterns can be lists of values, they can be ranges, they can be repeated values. So what I'm going to do is create 100 through 107. This is for the name, and this is for that parameter. We can come over and preview, make sure everything lines up like we want, and hit OK. There we go. We have our 8 tanks. To see exactly how this works, we can take a look at one of the instances. Basically, what we have here looks very similar to the UDT editor, but it's for the instance. We see that all of the parameters have been inherited from that parent data type. If we wanted, we could come in here and override any particular parameter. For example, if we wanted to make the valve control read only, we could do that. But for now, we won't touch any of this. We see that the parameter has been referenced here, and if we were to expand out any of these tags, we could see how it was applied on the OPC address. All right, so with that, I will turn over to Carl to show you the visual side of things.
All right, so now that we have a bunch of UDT instances, I'm going to show you how how I want to use those UDT instances in conjunction with the new component templates feature. So the first thing to do is to create a new template. And you'll see that up in our project browser, we have a new top-level entity here called templates. So I'm going to right-click in here and make a new template. And I'm going to call it tank template. All right. Now, designing a template is very similar to designing a window. You have a space here to put the components of your template in, and you've got the same component palette. So anyone who's familiar with designing vision windows, designing templates is really not a big stretch. One of the bigger differences, besides that my background is transparent, as you may have noticed, is that when I go to add custom properties to the template, I get these two different kinds of properties that I can add. I can add template parameters and internal properties. So all the properties that I add as template parameters will show up on each instance of the template that I use inside of a window. These are the properties that let me change each template instance to represent different information, whereas internal properties will be hidden from each instance and are only used for the internal logic of the template. In this case, I don't really have any internal properties to add, so I'm just going to add one template parameter. And the parameter for this template is going to be a tank object itself. So whereas previous to UDTs, we might have done this using an integer like a tank ID and then set up a whole host of indirect bindings within the template, there's now a way, in addition to adding the old list of standard types as custom properties, you can add instances of your user-defined types as well. So as opposed to doing a tank ID, I'm just going to make this parameter be of type tank. I'm also going to check this column that's labeled drop target, and I'll show you what that does a little bit later. Each template can have one of its parameters specified as the drop target, and we'll see that that's going to save us some time later on. So now I have a template parameter, and it is a tank, and you can see that this parameter value has no real information, but it does have the structure of the tank. And it won't really have any real information in it until we use the template on a window. So I'm going to go open up Symbol Factory and find a tank to represent our tanks of wine for Chateau Inductive. So I'll just search here for a tank, pick one. Let's pick this guy. So I'll drag it up into my template to import it. And I'll make it a bit bigger. That looks about right. And I'm just going to overlay a simple level indicator on top of this tank. So I'll take this level indicator, drop it on here, make it the size I want, give it a background color. I'm going to just tweak a few little parameters on it to make it look like I want it to look, and put it where I want it. All right. Now, to make the level indicator dynamic, I need to, of course, bind its value property. And to do that, instead of binding it to a tag, I can actually just bind it to a sub-property of my tank property. So I can go in here and pick the level and bind it using a property binding directly to the UDT. So with templates, you can use this method of creating a UDT property and then using a bunch of property bindings within the template, which saves you a whole bunch of indirect binding setup. And so in order to make this fully functional, we've also added the options of bidirectionality and overlay opt-out into the property binding. But I don't need bidirectional for this since it's just a display. So there we have it. I'm just going to leave it at that for now. And that's my tank template. So because we started with that project template when we created our tank farm project, you can see that I already have a whole organizational structure of windows in my project. And so I'm actually going to open up this main window 1, which is the startup window of the project. And it comes with a bunch of instructions on how to use the project template, which I'm going to delete because I want to use main window 1 for my tanks. Okay, so remember that drop target property that I checked when I added the tank parameter? Now is when it comes into play. So what I could do is take my tank template and just drag it onto the window like a component. And there I have it. And you can see it's got some quality overlays on it because it's not representing any real information. And it's got a tank parameter here that I could go and bind using a tag binding to a tank. But that's a lot of clicking. I want to do things fast. So here I have a tank representing tank 100. Well, another way I could do that is just by taking the tank template and dropping the next tank on it. That's what the drop target property does. When I drop a tank instance onto my template, it just sets up a binding automatically. And we went ahead and went one step further so that if you just drop a tank object onto a screen, it goes ahead and looks through all your templates, trying to find templates with drop targets that match that type. And if it finds exactly one template, it just creates that template for you. So now you can see where we're starting to really get fast. So now that we've made our tank template, making a screen with a whole bunch of tanks is really simple. And so now I have 8 tanks, which I'll go ahead and align nice and tight so that it looks good. It's my row alignment. And there we have it, 8 tanks that are displaying the level of the tanks. Okay, so you're starting to see how you can really create groups of components very rapidly with templates. Now we're going to look at how, hold on a second. All right, now we're going to look at the second reason why templates are so useful, and that is change propagation. So I made my tank, but now I don't like it because I don't know which tank is which. So I'm going to add a title to the tank. So I'm going to go ahead and make a little bit of room at the top, put a label on there, configure the label to look like I want it to look, give it a big old border, bigger font, and we're going to bind the label to some meta information that the tank gives us. In this case, the tag name. I'm going to center that text. All right, so I've made some changes to my tank. I've added a label to it. Now, when I switch back to the window, you'll see that change has propagated across all of my template instances. And if I had used this tank across multiple windows, they all would have updated right then. And that's going to be a huge time saver so that previous to templates, you probably would have been doing a lot of copying and pasting, and now you don't have to do that stuff. All right, so that was change propagation for templates. Let's do a little bit more change. I'm going to go ahead and add a temperature display onto the tank. Same idea. We're just going to go ahead and take a display, bind it to the temperature, and voila, we have a temperature display for all of our tanks. All right, now let's go back to our UDTs for a minute and talk about change propagation on UDTs. So creating all these UDTs was very simple. They all automatically pointed to the correct OPC addresses via the parameterization that Colby showed you. And I'm going to show you how changing UDTs is also a huge time saver. So I've made my project. I can monitor my tanks. I'm happy. But now I want to log some history. So let's log history for the level. So I'm going to go, so in case you didn't notice what is there, I'm editing the actual data type definition here, not one of the instances. So I'm going to go ahead and log history for the level and the temperature. So I'm setting it up to use our tag history feature, which is going to log it to that MySQL database. And now you'll see that each of the instances has been totally updated so that the level and temperature tags for each instance is logging history. All right, now I want to show that history. So let's make a pop-up window. So I'm going to go ahead and reuse the pop-up that comes with this project. And in this case, I'm going to pass the tank ID over to the pop-up window. So I'm going to add a tank ID custom property to the root container of my window, which is how we pass parameters to pop-up windows. And just for fun, I'll add another tank template display so you can see which tank you're looking at. And in this case, I need to bind the tank to an indirect tag binding referencing the correct UDT. So I'll go and find an example of one that I want, get rid of the 100, and instead use the value of that tank ID. Good. Okay. Of course, my overlays are bad because there is no tank 0, but that's okay. We'll fix that in a little bit. And then I want to add a chart. In this case, I'm just going to use a nice classic chart just because it's going to be quick and easy to set up with an indirect tag binding, an indirect tag history binding. So I'll go ahead and use tag history binding. Again, picking templates or examples of the tag paths that I want, and then setting up indirection. So what I want to do here is change this to an indirection parameter, as well as this one, the same parameter, and then define that parameter as the tank ID. And we're just going to go to a historical chart running the last 30 seconds of data for the chart. Oops, yeah, updates every second. All right. So here we have a little pop-up window that's going to display some process history for the chart. Now I need to pop this window up. And I'm going to add that script or that action to the header label of my template. So if I go ahead and just configure a new event handler for my label, when someone clicks on the label, I want to open my pop-up, and I want to pass a parameter. What did I call that parameter? Well, I got to get the capitalization right, otherwise it won't work. I call it tank ID. Okay. All right, so I type in tank ID, and I give it the tank's ID, which is inside of that that UDT that we showed you before. And let's go ahead and try this script out. So if I go into preview mode here and click on tank 100, my pop-up window is opened and it's all pointed to tank 100, looking at tank 100's history. So if I click on tank 105, you can see it's tank 105. So that shows you sort of a lot of different ways that you can work with these new templates and UDTs, and shows you how these new UDT properties can use all sorts of different kinds of bindings. So let's go ahead and save this project. Oh, wait. One more fun thing to show you. Okay, before I go and launch the project and show you a real-life project, I want to show you some of the new features we have for scripting. So let's say I wanted to add a button to this window that printed the screen or something. So I'm going to add a button, I'll print, add an action handler for it, and I want to print the screen. But let's say I don't have the entire scripting library memorized. Well, no longer would I have to consult the user manual. I know there's something about printing in the scripting, so what I do is I use this handy control space shortcut. So I go, okay, everything starts with system, system dot. Then I can hit control space. And now I have context-sensitive help for my scripting. So here's all the different scripting packages that come after system. So in this case, I want system.print, and then I hit control space again, and you can see these are the methods that are inside of the print package, as well as their documentation, and it tells me what function arguments each function accepts. So in this case, I want to create a print job that prints the root container of my Windows. So that's event.source.parent. Anyone who does a lot of scripting, I'm sure, is pretty excited to see that, to avoid any typos and not have to memorize so much information. And then I say job.print. All right. So let's save this project. And I'm actually going to go back to the home page inside this welcome panel. You can see what it normally looks like. And now, back in my web browser, I can see my tank farm project that we just created. And I can go ahead and launch it here. So here it is launching.
I guess you pass it back to me and we'll go to Q&A.
Right, so here we go. I can log in. Here we have our fully functional tank farm demo, complete with pop-up windows and indirection and history. And it only took a few minutes to create. So that's the basic overview of the new features of Ignition 7.4. Hopefully you new people out there are enticed to try it, and for all you existing users, I know these are some features that people have been waiting for quite a while, so we're excited to finally offer them to you. And we really just sort of brushed the surface of it. It goes deeper from here, so please call your salespeople for a more in-depth demo. And now I'm going to pass it back to Don.
Great, thanks so much. Thanks, everyone. Carl, Colby, thanks very much. We have Q&A time. We try to leave about 10 or 15 minutes for Q&A. So as we do, just a summary, you saw a little look at the web-based environment. You saw project templates, demoed component templates, a lot on user-defined types. And then, as Carl added into the last part there, the powerful scripting. So just as we go into Q&A, I just want to mention a couple things, because this particular Design Like a Pro webinar and white paper series is perfectly timed for those of you who, looking at what was demonstrated today, are very interested in what the next steps are. So please join us March 13th, 9 a.m., developing dynamic HMI SCADA projects with speed and precision. And in that webinar, we will be covering how to use dynamic templates to streamline your design process, how to bind real-time data to objects in an object-oriented design environment, and how to leverage SQL databases to design powerful HMI SCADA projects. So you can go to the resources section of our website or visit inductiveautomation.com/designlikeapro series. So please feel free to take advantage of that, because it's something that we're doing throughout this entire year, is try and bring you content-rich webinars that can help you really push forward in terms of your own success with ignition. Additionally, just some upcoming training notes. There's an ignition module development boot camp training later this month. April's core training is sold out, but you have 3-day advanced training in April, 4-day OE downtime module training, and 5-day ignition core training. So please take advantage of those, and I really will speak for Travis, who runs our training and support services. He does a great job, his team, and you'll find it extremely valuable to get yourself moving faster. Now we're moving into a question and answer period, so as we look at that, let's give you folks a chance to ask some questions. And just as a housekeeping thing, I didn't tell you to, but many of you have been with our webinars a lot, so you know to sort of put in your questions. So what I'm going to do is just kind of moderate questions for about 10 minutes. You can use the question tab on your console to add more questions. And I'm going to start I'll throw them your direction, Carl and Colby, and then you guys can sort of say one or the other comment or both comment. So the first one is from Brian Cook. The scripting behind the component template get propagated out to instances of the template when changed.
Yes.
That is a yes.
In fact, I think that question was asked early on, but I believe I showed that. So in case you didn't catch it, I added some scripting to that label, a little mouse handler that popped up the pop-up, and all of those template instances got that script on it.
Good. Okay. We'll go for another one here. Did you say multiple people can access the same project to edit simultaneously? Howard has that question.
Yeah. So the designers can be launched concurrently by multiple designers, and they can edit the same project simultaneously. A project is organized into different resources. So each window is a resource, each template is a resource, each transaction group is a different resource, and each resource gets locked while it's being edited by each designer. So you can't have two designers simultaneously editing the same resource, but you can definitely have them simultaneously editing the same project.
Okay, another question here is how can you import an existing pre-version 7.4 component as a new template?
Good question. So it wouldn't really be that tough. Assuming that you had your pre-7.4 components organized in a container, you basically just copy the contents of that container and paste them into a template. And then you'd have to go and replace all of the places where you had copied and pasted that container with your template, but it really would just be a copy and paste job to turn it into a template.
Okay, the next question is a comment. That's pretty impressive.
Thank you.
Yeah, we think so too, so thank you. And the next question is, how do UDTs affect tag DB layout?
So for this initial release, UDTs are only supported by the internal tag provider. For those of you who know the difference, SQL tags can live internally to Ignition, or they can live in an external database. For this 7.4.0 release, it's only in internal databases, so it's not going to affect your tag database, the external database layout. In regards to SQL tags history, it doesn't affect them at all. The UDTs as instances run basically as standard tags, and so the UDT parent shows up basically as a folder, and it's all pretty much straightforward.
Great, thanks. Next one is, will a 7.3 project work in 7.4 without modification? That's David's question.
Yes, absolutely. So, I mean, we always strive for 100% backwards compatibility, and even when we add new features, all the old features still work. So there's nothing forcing you to use templates or UDTs, so everything in 7.3 will still work just fine in 7.4.
Great, okay. So how soon will this be posted to download? I missed the start of it. So just so housekeeping to everybody, when we finish this, Travis in the middle of training, he says we'll have it up and running by lunch hour today.
I believe it's up already.
Oh, okay.
I think it went up last night. So 7.4 right now is, I believe release candidate 1 is up.
Okay.
We'll probably have release candidate 2 up this afternoon, and then my guess is that the truly gold release will go out next week. But the release candidates are pretty good. I encourage you all to play with them.
Excellent. Okay, cool. Next one, can I connect to a OPC server and an OPC UA server from the same project?
Sure. So that question, I believe, is asking if we can connect to classic OPC servers, the OPC VA specification, concurrently with UA, and the answer is yes. In Ignition, you can connect to any number of OPC servers that you want. The classic OPC connection is made through a module called the OPC COM module, which is included in the base install, but not, it's a separate license module. And I should also mention at this point, for those of you who have been with us a while, that there is a beta available for the OPC COM module that now supports 64-bit systems. Previously, the OPC COM module only supported 32-bit, but now you can use it. You can do a full 64-bit Java, Ignition, everything.
Great. Thanks, Colby. So we're going to take a couple of more questions here because there's quite a few of them. We want to get to as many as we can. And if we don't get to all of them, then we will respond. Up on the screen here, I have Jim, Vanessa, Myron, Shane, and Raman, and they're all available to answer your questions, to do demos. You may also receive a call from either Melanie or Patricia because they're our business development specialists, and their job is to answer these questions through setting up the proper combination of our account executives and engineers to give you a good demo and get deeper into questions you may have. So if we don't get to all your questions here, we will follow up with you. A couple of more though. When you drag the tag template object over to the window, is it possible that it will have more than one graphic associated with it? And if so, does it let you pick which one?
Okay, so there's, I think, 2 possible interpretations of that question. So one is any given template, you could configure it to have sort of variable graphics. What you would do is you would add like a different template parameter. Maybe you've got 2 different kinds of tanks that have different visuals. You could specify which kind as a parameter and then swap the visibility of 2 different sets of graphics based on that parameter. The other interpretation of that question is if there are 2 different templates whose drop targets are associated with the same UDT type, if you drag an instance of that UDT onto a window, then it will prompt you for which template you want to create.
Great. Thanks, Carl. So, Colby, how about, can you speak briefly about creation of UDTs in Ignition for PLCs that don't have UDTs, such as Modbus PLCs?
Oh, sure. So, as you saw, I went in there and parameterized the tank ID. Well, with a PLC like a Modbus PLC or a SLIC or something, I would have gone in there and basically created the OPC items by hand to map to the correct area. This assumes that there's some regularity. So let's say that with Modbus, every 5 tags represent some object. So I would just go in there and I would parameterize the OPC path in the appropriate way, and I would use the multi-instance wizard or print it by hand. But basically, I would be able to say, well, actually, one thing I didn't show in here that would be really useful is that you can when you use the parameters, you have a few options such as an offset and formatting as well. So let's say every 5 addresses is a data type. I would create 5 OPC tags. I would create a base address parameter, and then those tags I would say base address +1, base address +2, etc. And in that way we can create our data type where we still only have to set one parameter. We can just say, okay, base address, 0, 5, 10, so on.
Okay, cool. Just a couple more quick questions, then we're going to end off here. Are template changes automatically propagated, or can multiple changes be made and propagated at one time?
Okay, good question. So they're automatically propagated within the designer session, but until you hit save, nothing gets propagated after the running clients. And even that configure can be customized. You can turn off that automatic propagation if you'd rather work on a template and then manually have to commit it to the project in order for it to propagate.
Okay, thanks, Carl. I'll just take one last question, and I really want to say thank you to all of you for the incredible number of questions and participation in today. So, and I'll give each of you guys a chance to say anything final if you want to say anything final for today's. But this question is, will templates created in one project be available for other projects when saved?
Good question. So I didn't get to show it, but there's, not directly is the immediate answer, but there's a new feature where you can right-click on a template in one project, and there's a send to menu, and it lists all your other projects, or you can just send them to all other projects. So what we envision is that if you have multiple projects that want to share templates, you could create a project that was not launchable, that just housed your templates, and then you make changes to those templates, right-click on it, and send them to all your other projects.
Right, and that was really the result of feedback we got from some of our integrators who have had problems with updates to templates and other systems affecting projects they didn't think about. And stuff like that.
Over propagation.
Right. So Don said that was the last question.
That's the last question, but I'll give you a chance to say what you want,
sure,
Colby, okay?
Sure. I see a few questions in here asking about, can you use templates inside of other templates, or similarly, can you use data types inside of other data types? And the answer to both of those is yes. You can create composite templates where you have multiple layers of other templates in there. And for data types, you can create composite data types, and you can actually extend data types as well. So I could, if I had a certain, if some of my other tanks have a valve on it, I could make a new tank with valve that extends from tank, and so create a hierarchy like that.
So that addresses a couple of the different questions or different angles on that. Anything else you want to say in concluding? Anything, Colby?
No, I think that's about it. There are a lot of questions we didn't get to, but like Don said, we'll make an effort and make sure we get back to you guys.
Yeah. How about you? Any final thing you want to say? No? So thanks so much, Carl and Colby, and thanks to you for participating. And I just want to reiterate what I said at the outset about the mission here at Inductive Automation is we really do want you to be successful. And I think a lot of the things that are in 7.4 you can see are going to be extremely valuable as time savers and will contribute to that success. So please follow up with whoever you work with as an account executive. Schedule a demo of 7.4. I can't encourage you enough to say schedule the demo, take some time, get whoever in the room needs to be in the room to participate in that demo, because when you do, you're going to get to dig into your questions personally and make sure you come away with that with complete certainty on how you can benefit from the 7.4 release of Ignition. So with that, we've come to the end of our time. Thanks so much for everybody's participation. And this will be available, just so you know, this webinar will be online to view again or share with others by end of day today Pacific time. So you'll have the ability to go back and look at it again or share it. With that, thanks so much for your participation and have a great day.